Good morning to you. 4 minutes after 9 on Friday, April the 29th. Coming up later in this hour, police tried to keep the identity of a Polish rapist a secret. They feared it would fuel racial tension in his community. Where was it? What was their justification? More importantly, how was that broken? That's coming up later in this hour, after we hear from Nigel Farage. And I also have to tell you, because we now move into a new period, or a different period as regards broadcasting, we will have a representative from the Remain campaign as well. Nigel Farage, leader of UKIP, welcome to the show. Just a quick word from you, if you would, sir. How's your campaign going?
Going well. I mean, there are two campaigns. The first campaign is next week, on the 5th of May. We've got the most complex set of elections in the United Kingdom ever. We've got London Assembly and Mayor, Scottish Parliament, Welsh Assembly, Northern Irish Assembly, police and crime commissioners all across England, a by-election in Sheffield Brightside, a by-election in Ogmore, and about 2,500 council seats up for grabs. I mean, it's almost like Super Tuesday. So that's one campaign.
Yes.
And I'm probably not allowed to tell you how I'm doing in that for reasons of balance.
Yes, absolutely. There's a list of all candidates on LBC.
Yeah. It'll take you 3.5 years to read them all. And then there's the referendum campaign.
Yes, tell me about Vote Leave.
Well, the official designation was a couple of weeks ago. So the campaign proper has begun. The Remain campaign have literally thrown the kitchen sink at trying to frighten the bejesus out of us on economics, and they've roped in all their mates at the OECD and the International Monetary Fund and a variety of overpaid, useless people all over the world who work for international organisations to tell us we'll be poverty-struck. And the official Leave campaign, which is Vote Leave, have been a bit on the back foot, I think. I think it's been a defensive couple of weeks because the assaults come daily that we'll all be living in caves if we're not governed by old men in Brussels. I think the official campaign's been a bit on the back foot.
So how does it need to get back on the front foot then? What does Vote Leave need to do?
Well, we need to get into the other half of the pitch where the enemy's goal is vulnerable, and that is over open-door immigration, that is over an increased risk of terrorism, not to mention some cultural questions, such as what happened in Cologne outside that train station on New Year's Eve. So I think that we need to get into their half of the pitch and try, and I think then we can start to make some arguments that they will find very difficult to deal with.
Let's go straight to the calls. Graham's in Bradford. Graham, you're through to Nigel Farage. Go ahead.
Hello, Nick. Hello, Nigel.
Good morning.
Hello, sir.
Well, at the time of Gaza in 2014, the emotions in Bradford were running very wild. There was mass protests every weekend by thousands of angry Muslims. There was Palestinian flags flying all around the city. Even, George Galloway had said about making Bradford an Israeli-free zone. I just wondered, Nigel, whether you think Naz Shah was right to be suspended like she has been, and whether she deserves a second chance.
Can you just imagine for a moment if somebody in UKIP had said what Naz Shah had said, and let alone me or one of our MEPs, but I mean even just, a local councillor from somewhere under Wold had made a comment like this. There would be such a national outcry. There would be demands for my resignation. Some would say UKIP should be closed down as a party. I mean, it would be unbelievable. Look, what Naz Shah said, and I know it was a little time ago, but to use the words that she used about resettling Jewish people and the word solution being part. I mean, look, it's absolutely.
Some would say she was talking about Israel, though. If you want to dance on the head of
this, of course, is what they all say, isn't it? I mean, come on, let's be honest. The Israel-Palestine divide has always been something that has been a left-right issue in politics, and the left have always been strongly pro-Palestinian to the extent that many of them don't think the state of Israel should actually exist. However, I do feel that begins to spill over sometimes into the word Israel being used as cover for what is a form of anti-Semitism. And what has happened, and I think what has happened in Bradford, is that left-wing support and sympathy for anti-Israel / anti-Israeli views has now become allied to a very big growth in the Muslim vote in this country. And I think what you have in Bradford is sectarian politics. And I loathe it, because if we think about the other part of the United Kingdom that's been plagued by sectarian politics, it's called Northern Ireland, with Protestant v Catholic, and look where that has got us. So I'm worried that the left of the Labour Party have always had this view. They're now linking it in a desperate attempt to get all the Muslim votes in this country, and I think we're in a bad place.
What should happen to Naz Shah and indeed Ken Livingstone? Should they be expelled from the Labour Party?
I don't think they'd last long in UKIP, is all I can say. How Labour order themselves is entirely their business.
So if these were UKIP members, they'd be out?
Oh, I don't think. I mean, look, I think what Naz Shah said was completely unacceptable. And as for Ken, I just don't get it, really. I mean, here's a bloke who's really massively experienced in terms of media, politics, output. I can't think of any example where anybody I know has ever, even jokingly, cited Hitler as being a reliable source and witness. I find it just astonishing.
So he needs to go as well?
That's up to the Labour Party.
But he would if he was UKIP?
Without doubt.
Yvonne's in Enfield. Yvonne, you're on the radio. Good morning.
Good morning. The comments made by Boris Johnson against Barack Obama were racist. I don't think Boris Johnson in himself is racist, but they were racist. And then for you, Nigel Farage, to pipe in and talk about TTIP, which everyone is a bit unsure about, yes, sure, but about them taking over the NHS service, when you yourself, on the 12th of October 2012, talked about privatising the health service. And then all this anti-Semitism about Barack Obama's grandparents. I mean, if your grandparent was suffering horrendous torture by whichever country did it, of course you would not forget it. He's a human being, and you talking about him removing a bust in Churchill means he's anti-British. We've got so much anti-Semitism going on at the moment, and we've got to remember one thing. Racism, no matter where it comes from, whether it's... I'm a Roman Catholic myself. Whether it's about Muslims or Jewish people or black people, we've got to remember that even... The slave trade was prominently run by...
We're covering a lot of issues. Let's get some time for Nigel Farage.
Yvonne, you've got quite a long script there to read, I see. Look, I haven't piped in. I've said for some years that I think Obama is the most anti-British American president we've ever seen. He doesn't look to Britain in the way that previous American presidents have.
When Mayor Johnson brought in his ancestry, was that racist?
Of course it wasn't. I don't think anybody would ever accuse Boris of racism. And it's certainly not anti-Semitism, Yvonne. I don't quite know where you get that from. I think the Obama intervention was wholly unnecessary, a massive mistake, and actually I think it's backfired.
Well, there's a poll in the Times a couple of days ago which seems to support that.
Yeah, I think it has backfired. I don't think the British take kindly to being threatened by American presidents. And the fact that he said we'd be at the back of the queue when Americans don't use the word queue, they use the word line, showed you what he was doing, was parroting the line from Number 10. On TTIP, Yvonne, I've never advocated privatising the National Health Service. I have said that the French use an insurance system. It's slightly different, and maybe one day we'll have to think about changing it. But it's not our priority. Our priority is to make sure the National Health Service is not the International Health Service. And how can it be right that last year we paid a bill of £6 billion to European hospitals across the EU for treating British nationals, and in return we only got £400 million back from other governments with us treating EU people in our hospitals. So there are more urgent priorities within the health service, and I do think on TTIP, and we have raised this before, Nick, on the programme.
Yes.
I do think on TTIP that in some ways Barack Obama was an emissary for the giant multinational American companies who would love to access public services within the European Union, and that does include our National Health Service.
Let's do a quick email here. Danny in Narborough. I like Nigel Farage. He tells the truth. Would you ask him, would he ever use the word totty?
Oh, Danny, we're talking about Colonel Bob here, aren't we?
Colonel Bob and Totty Gate, as it became.
I know.
I get the sense you might use the word Todd. Do you have sympathy for Colonel Bob?
I like Colonel Bob, and I suspect Colonel Bob might have had a sherbet or two, and Colonel Bob... there are some people like Colonel Bob who have a way of talking and a sense of humour that probably went down very well in the mess in 1968 and doesn't transfer very well to modern Britain. Did Colonel Bob mean it maliciously? I doubt it. Was Isabel Hardman offended? Yes, but sometimes...
Would you use... And I refer to the question,
No.
would you... Have you used the word totty?
I don't think so. I don't know. I doubt it.
Kim's in Bristol. Kim, go ahead.
Hi, Nick.
Hello, Kim.
Hi, Nigel.
Hello.
There are 3,000 traumatised orphan Syrian children, and I mean children. We're talking babies, we're talking toddlers, we're talking 7, 8-year-olds. We're not talking 16 and 17-year-olds, as some people would have you think, sitting today in refugee camps, squalid refugee camps, these are, in Europe. MPs this week had the opportunity to vote and let these poor children come to England on humanitarian grounds.
This is obviously the debate that's been raging through this week, Nigel Farage.
Well, the trouble is, Kim, if we say yes, then more children will drown because more children will be sent across the Mediterranean. And we should be providing humanitarian aid for people in dire trouble, in Turkey, in the Lebanon, wherever they are, if they've been displaced by bad things that are happening. But the more you say yes to people, whether they're children or adults, the more you encourage that flow to continue, and that is the problem.
Quick response from you, Kim.
Can I finish my question?
Go on.
This was based on the Save the Children proposal put forward. It's a one-off 3,000 innocent children that was based on a plan for all of the orphan children in Europe, for each of the European countries to take in their fair share. Okay? So it's not going to keep on going. It's a one-off situation.
Right,
and our Tory ministers, I know you didn't vote, but our Tory ministers voted this down. Now, I believe that actions speak louder than words.
Well, the trouble, Kim, with fair share is that the official figures show that 642,000 people settled in Britain last year legally. And because of that, we're finding as a country less room in our heart for people who might qualify as genuine refugees or be displaced. I have no problem in providing help for people who are genuinely in threat of their lives because of their religion, their race, their orientation, the classical definition of what a refugee is. And whilst one is sympathetic to 3,000 children in Calais, the problem is, as I say, if we say yes, it will not, as you said, be a one-off. There'll be 3,000 children there again in a further 6 or 7 weeks, and that is the problem. And I believe we should be providing humanitarian aid, in the region, in Turkey, in the Lebanon, in the camps.
In the run-up to the Euro vote, we have to offer balance, so I need to tell you we will have a representative from the Remain campaign in just a moment. After the final question, Neil in Plymouth. Neil, you're through to Nigel Farage. Go ahead.
Hi, Nigel. Absolute pleasure to speak to you. I'm very concerned about the In campaign and their very vigorous support amongst leaders throughout the world, and how the earth will fall in and the skies will disappear should we leave. I think we're not putting enough emphasis on what will happen if we stay in. There's no certainty as to what will happen if we stay in. Other countries may join the EU. We'll have mass immigration, and the Tito agreement will probably go ahead. Which means
got to move you to the question, Neil. What's your actual question, Neil?
My question is that I don't think sufficient emphasis is being put on the problems of staying in.
No, I agree with that. And if we stay in, by 2025, it looks like Turkey will be a member of the European Union, ultimately with free movement of people for 77 million people from Turkey. Incidentally, Neil, there may well be a visa-free travel deal for Turkey by October of this year. And if we stay in the European Union, we will see repeated Eurozone crises, with the next Greek one due in July, just a few weeks after our referendum. Bailout number 4. You couldn't invent it, could you? And if we vote to stay in, we will see yet more legislation taking away from this country yet more of its ability to govern itself. And if we stay in, we will see political parties and movements springing up in every single country of the European Union, fighting and opposing it. I tell you, I'll give you one certainty. What is certain is that if we vote to leave, we will be a self-governing, independent nation. Doesn't mean we'll get everything right, but we will be in charge of our own destiny.
But just coming back to one of Neil's points, world leader after world leader, businessmen, businesswomen all say Britain is stronger, Britain is safer.
Yeah, line them all up. Goldman Sachs, Siemens Engineering, Obama, the IMF. This very community that have run the West, that have taken us into an endless series of wars, have taken us through years where the rich have got richer and the poor have got poorer, and have been deaf to our demands for change. Well, here's our chance. This is the people versus the politicians on June the 23rd. And you know what? It looks pretty even, Stephen. We could do something here in this referendum that is dramatic, not just for us, but actually in many ways for the whole of the West.
So either people carrying them in the street, so we're doing more stop search, targeted on those people we think are gang members and people who carry knives. And secondly, stop searching in places we know that knives are buried. What happens is they don't always carry them with them, but they'll keep them handy. Perhaps not at home.